So my name's Louise Speakman, and I'm from Lancaster University. My colleague Pauline is in the chat, and she's going to monitor the chat for us. Caitlyn is from the University of Chester and is going to speak to us today about how COVID has brought on changes to the support of systematic reviews. Because there's quite a few of us, if we all make sure that we're muted, that would be great. And also, if you've got any questions, if you put them in the chat, if you like a question that's in the chat, if you like it for me, give it a thumbs up, and then we can ask Caitlyn at the end, if that's okay with everyone. I mean, if there's not loads of questions and you want to speak, that's fine at the end as well. Caitlyn's quite happy to take questions at the end. So I'm going to send it over to Caitlyn. It's about a 20-minute talk. Is that round about right?
Yes, I haven't timed it, so if I start to bluther on, please stop me. And if I go too quickly, hopefully we'll find something to discuss to pad out the time.
Yeah, we should be finished for 2 o'clock.
Yeah.
So hopefully that works with everyone. So over to you, Caitlyn.
Great. Well, hello everyone, and today I'm going to be reviewing the situation systematically. So if there's any other musical theater nerds out there, you might recognize that as a title from a song from Oliver, which when I sat down to prepare this presentation just popped into my head for some reason. And in the corner, little picture there is Fagin, who sings the song looking quite forlorn, and I feel like that's a bit symbolic to how I've felt at different times with supporting systematic reviews. So I should say that I am not an expert in the slightest. In fact, sometimes I feel like quite a bit of an idiot when it comes to systematic reviews. And it's definitely been a struggle for us for the past couple years, and something that's really filled up all of my brain power and thoughts at times. So I'm kind of using this as a therapy session just to get the experience out there and share with you some of the coping mechanisms that we developed here in regards to supporting systematic reviews. But I thought it would be a good time to just as well get some ideas and suggestions of what other people are doing out there with supports for systematic reviews, and just share our experience once I kind of lay out where we're up to. So I am an assistant academic liaison librarian at Chester. Just to lay the background out, on our team there is 3 of us. I'm the full-time assistant. There's another part-time, and then an academic liaison librarian. And we support subjects. It's always consistently been the social sciences, but we have also supported variations of the life sciences, biological sciences, medicine. Now we've kind of landed on social sciences and clinical sciences, just to get you an idea of what we do. So where we began. My brain was a vast empty space when it came to systematic reviews. My academic background is mostly with literature, so I've never done anything vaguely related to systematic reviews, never even heard of a systematic review until I was tasked to give a presentation in front of students about a systematic review, which fortunately I had the slides and the session plan provided by a colleague. And for the first one, I just really sat there and read through the notes exactly as they were, and hoping that no one asked me too difficult of a question, because there was no way I'd be able to answer it. And after the first one, I began to realize, oh, okay, when it comes to systematic reviews, we're mostly just providing guidance on doing advanced literature searching in a systematic way. At that time, the only real buy-in we had with systematic reviews was that there was one course that would do that as their master's dissertation. So they were introduced in a 2-hour session by their lecturer about the whole systematic review process. And then we'd come in at the second hour to, as I said, really do advanced literature searching for them. And that's all that we had to do with it. And it was always something that from time to time would I guess it'd say bother me that I didn't know more about it, and I did some independent investigations. My manager arranged for me to speak with an NHS librarian about conducting systematic reviews, which that fully exploded my brain with what the whole process entailed. So hats off to you that do this full on, because don't feel like I could, and I'm really impressed by you. Um, but it wasn't something that came up a lot for us. It was very limited. And then, well, COVID, and I don't think I really need to go into many details as to what happened, but the main upshot was that from the very limited number of students we had doing systematic reviews, it suddenly felt that every single one of them was doing a systematic review. And we really had to up our game, which entailed really getting our heads around systematic reviews and really what our part in providing support for it was. But also at the same time, we were getting used to working from home and dealing with all the new technology. Um, and I think to make it even more stressful is that our one traditional session that we had on systematic reviews was always scheduled for the end of March, beginning of April. So it was right when we hit lockdown. We had this session, which was more important than ever because that's what everyone needed to do. And we weren't even sure how to present as we are now online. So there was a lot of rushing to come up with just some learning materials that we could use. At that time, we didn't even know if we could present online, teach online, how that would work. And I created now what seems a very amateurish video that we shared with them. And we just gathered together some notes, some links, and provided a little package for them for support. But that was really what got the ball rolling, because yes, necessity really is the mother of invention. And by being forced into this situation, we really started to look seriously at what our support was, what we could do, and what to make it better, what type of materials we needed to provide, how our sessions work, and really clear cut put into place what our level of support was going to be for systematic reviews. So where we're at now after going through that period is we have what I'd label a three-pronged support. We still provide in-class sessions upon request, but our main support for systematic reviews entails one-to-one appointments with students. We have a regular webinar that we hold about introducing systematic reviews, and then we've created an online guide. All the librarians across the different academic liaison teams chipped in to create that. And we feel like with these three things, they work all well together. And also they're good sort of backup materials for the in-class sessions that we still do provide. So with our one-to-one appointments, we don't have ones that are specifically set aside for systematic reviews. Our one-to-one appointments can cover any library skills topic. But I would say over the past 2-3 years, our most requested topic to cover is systematic reviews. And within the systematic reviews, I'd say most students, what they tend to ask for is either advice with databases, such as which databases are best for them to use, or help using the databases, using EndNote to maintain the resources and papers that they find for their systematic review, or where they've been working on a search strategy and search string, but they're not getting the type of results that they would expect, then they'll come to us to offer any advice on what, as they always say, what am I doing wrong? And usually it's not very much, but we're just there for a bit of hand holding and slightly tweaking of the search. So the appointments can be held either on Teams, or we've now started to introduce in-person sessions again. Students are free to book themselves in for an appointment online, though a lot of them, they still come to us through our emails. And as a team across the three of us, we try to offer 5 standard appointments per week that a student can book, but we do and can arrange for more sessions depending on the demand that we have at a particular week and what else we have on. We'll try and meet with as many students as we can who need to be have a meeting. Our regular webinars, it's called Getting Started with Your Systematic Review, and it is an introduction to searching systematically. So it's part of a rolling program of library skills that we have. It's a webinar series that we started last year, but we really expanded upon this year. And we have decided, due to demand and also just due to the different schedule that our students have with systematic reviews, it seems to be throughout the year someone will need help with it, that we will hold them regularly. So we had our first webinar for the systematic reviews back in November. And in the second term, we plan to hold one every month. So it's actually next week that I'm running the next session on systematic reviews for our students. These sessions feed really nicely into our other most popular session during our webinars. It's the EndNote training session. So we usually do our bit and then really recommend that the students get themselves signed up to do EndNote training as well. So this is the flow chart that we use in our systematic review webinar. And I think it really nicely lays out exactly where we fit in the process and what support we do. So on either end, in the slightly darker green, you have the research question and the conduct analysis. And that's the parts that we say to the students that we'd expect them to work with their advisor, work with their department to come up with. So we'd expect them already to have a research question in place. And then within the session, we work on doing all the advanced literature searching skills. So identifying keywords, identifying relevant databases, how to create a search strategy, and then guide them on about how they would start to conduct scoping searches. We touch on how to record the results, and then, as I said, we'll talk about exporting and saving the results, but only briefly, and say, you know, this is where EndNote comes in. And then at that point, as I said, we go, that's as far as we can take you when it comes to analyzing what you have. If you need further support, please go back to your advisor. So that's really what we've landed on when it comes to systematic reviews, is that we are here for the systematic searching, and that's as far as we go with it. And then our final part of our 3-prong guide is the online guide. So if that lands on our library web pages, it goes further than what I would normally do in our systematic review webinar. It covers gray literature searching, which isn't something that I really have time to do because the webinars themselves are an hour and a half without that. And also, we don't actively advise on using frameworks for a systematic review, although that is on the guide with links to external sites for them to find out more, but that isn't something that we usually support or advise on. So some difficulties that we found across the way, even with these now in place, is that there's not a one size fits all approach that we think really works. This is kind of the best that we've come up with. There's such a big range of the complexity and breadth of systematic reviews within the university. And it's really comes a bit of a catch-all term because we have undergraduate dissertations that are saying that they're doing systematic reviews. And then we have people for their PhD thesis doing a systematic review, where what they are doing on the undergraduate dissertation is really more like a literature search plus rather than a systematic review. So I think that's tricky for us to navigate what the students' expectations are, what actually their advisors' expectations are, and what they actually think and mean by the term systematic review. It can vary quite a bit, and where students are looking for guidance of, how many sources should I use? How many databases should I check? And we have to be quite vague on all of that and kind of feel like we're passing the buck to say, well, you have to go back to your advisor. We can advise you on the search, but any of the other details, it's really more what the expectations are from your department. So where do we go from here? The first thing on our agenda is to record a standard clean version of the webinar. At the moment, we record each and every single webinars that we do and send that out to our attendees and anyone who registered who couldn't attend. But we'd want one that is just a set video that we can share. We have a library skills video channel, so we'd want a good version that we could have on there, and then also just a standard link that we could send out instead of recording each and every webinar that we do. And then something that we have been talking about for a while in our team, and it just gets down to time, is to work together to do our own systematic search. And we feel that by doing this, it will probably increase our confidence in providing support for systematic reviews, having done a similar type experience ourselves. And we feel that we might be able to uncover some areas of improvement within our support that wouldn't necessarily be clear to us until we've actually gone and done it ourselves. So, right, that's all I really have to say, and kind of like pass it over to you guys for any questions or suggestions. I have a QR code there that I have made a little Padlet if anyone wanted to add things there rather than in the chat, but kind of open to what works for everyone.
Thank you, Caitlyn. I think it's really interesting to see what other universities are doing, and quite a lot of the time we're kind of doing the same things, I think. There are questions in the chat, so I'll get to them. One of my questions was, what are the numbers like? What's the uptake like for the webinars and the appointments? Do you find that you have to do the extra appointments anyway, or Because we do webinars and the numbers are not always very strong, but the one-to-one appointments are.
Yeah, so with the webinars, I would say usually I get between 20 and 30 people registering per webinar. And then when it gets to actual attendance, this is where you can see a sharp decline. I'd say probably half the number of people who register end up attending. So I usually expect to get around 15
So it's still a good
students.
number though, isn't it? I think
Yeah.
that's a really good number. One of the questions was how many of your one-to-one students have you noticed that they've attended the webinars as well? And do you making it almost mandatory to help reduce that repetition of one-to-ones?
Yeah. So there's not that many repeats for one-to-ones from those who attended the webinars. I think what's more likely to happen after the webinars is that they might contact us through a message over Teams or send us an email with maybe a one-off question rather than wanting to do a one-to-one appointment. We're trying to more now direct them to the webinars if possible rather than the one-to-one session first. So with our one-to-one sessions, we have the online booking form. And if a student goes and just books themselves onto an appointment, regardless of what it is, we'll just honor that appointment. But if they would contact us through email to say, can I have a one-to-one to look at systematic reviews? What I would do in the first instance would be to send them a link to an online guide. And if there was a webinar coming up within the next week or two, send them the link to the webinar and say, look at this. If you can attend the webinar, and then after that, if you still have questions or you can't attend the webinar, let me know and we'll arrange a one-to-one appointment.
That's a good way of doing it, I think, as well. Because sometimes you do get that repetition, don't you? So another question, do you ask that student researchers have a protocol or other prerequisites work before meeting? So before the one-to-ones, I'm assuming.
No, we don't. We basically let them come as they are. And with the systematic review sessions that we do with one-to-ones, they are all really completely entirely student-led. So they don't have to do any pre-work. And sometimes with the one-to-ones, they'll come in just completely blank, haven't even started yet, and just want to talk through what the research process is like.
Oh, okay. I know Ruth said that's what they recommend, and it's something that we recommend at Lancaster. Bryony asks, is it purely EndNote that you recommend support, or do you cover things like Rayan or Covidence or any of those kind of software?
We purely recommend EndNote because that is the one that the University of Chester have invested heavily in, and that's what we basically tell students if they want to use anything else, they can, but the only support that we can provide them with in the library is through EndNote.
Yeah, I think Bryony just goes on to say that they don't, but they someone else has said that they encourage Rayan as well. But again, it's not something that we support here at Lancaster. From Elaine, how do you approach developing the search strategy in the session, if not covering question frameworks in the session? So.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so we tend to keep things we've found a question that works quite well about young people during COVID in England. And so we start off with looking at coming up with alternative keywords for it, and then go through Boolean operators, which I'm always constantly surprised how far along students can get and never having dealt with Boolean operators. And then look at some of the more advanced search techniques like, using truncation, wildcards, etc., and then help them just build the string that way. I think because with the webinars, we have a wide range of students from different departments. It's not really appropriate to focus on a specific protocol because we do have students from the social sciences as well as the more medicine and clinical sciences. And there's just not the time, even with an hour and a half session. With what we tend to do is do a search strategy with them, and then how to do it on the database, and then have time for questions, and that nearly takes up the whole time.
Yeah, and sometimes when they come in, they don't really know what they need, do they? I find. Kate's asked, do you get any research staff contacting you for support and training as well as students?
Yes, we do. Again, they tend to approach us usually in the same ways, mostly for one-to-ones that we work with them. But I've had a few webinars with quite a few members of staff turn up on that as well.
Yeah, I think that's always quite interesting, isn't it? When you see that academic staff are on those webinars as well. I think that's an interesting thing to see. There's a bit of chat going on about the terminology. Do you find, and I actually did write it down as well, because I know it's something that we encounter, and it looks like quite a few do. Do you find that people are not quite doing systematic reviews and they're actually doing literature reviews? Do you find that the terminology is interchangeable these days?
I mean, I would say that the students, they're doing something that is slightly higher than a literature review, but not quite a systematic review. It's sort of falls at a very weird position, and it's quite hard for us because that's the terminology that the academics are using with them. And so we just go along with it. But I do think there's points where it gets confusing for students because when they take out any books on conducting a systematic review and they kind of see what the whole process is like, then they have a bit of a panic, and you kind of have to talk them down to say like, well, actually with your assignment, you're not expected to do all that. You only have a month to do it, and there's no way you do all these steps. Just focus on this.
Yeah, and sometimes they go, I've only got 4,000 words, and you're like, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it is trying to like get it out of the students as well, isn't it, as to where their assignment is. But yeah, that, in fact, I spoke to an academic yesterday about how it's being used interchangeably and causing quite a lot of stress for students. I think I've addressed all of the questions in the chat, Caitlin. I don't think I've missed anything. Just let me have a quick look. So there's a couple left, that's okay. We've had that plus others. Yeah, so it's about the interchangeable. Bryony did say that they don't do searches. So do you actually do the searches for students? Do you just show them in the right direction? How do you approach that?
Yeah, we don't do searches. We show them the right direction. The most that we'll get is, as far as doing searches, is if someone gives me a search string and they tell me I'm doing this and it's not working, I'll run tests for them, as it were, but I won't actually provide the search. I'll test and then advise.
Yeah, I think that's kind of where we're at as well, really. So thank you very much, Caitlin. Thank you to everyone who has attended. It's been really interesting. And it's always a little bit comforting to know that we're all in the same boat. Well, I find it is anyway. So thank you very much, Caitlin. Thank you for your time. And thank you for everyone and their questions. And I hope to see you at the next one.
Yes, and thank you for making this so painless for me.
Thank you for it being painless for me too. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Okay,
you.
bye.
Bye.